Shall we let people know what our policy document is? We're here tonight to discuss any potential policy changes to the SMRPD policy. We have like a pretty simple but informative 11-page document that is kind of special to our district. We've got, federal laws that we adhere to, state government code specifically for parks and recreations. We've got the Ralph M. Brown Act for transparency and all that kind of stuff. And then there's, of course, Robert's Rules of Order that we try to adhere to with our meetings and how we conduct our business. And then we've got our board policy that outlines what our board is, why, what we are to do, what the board itself does, what the directors can do. And so we're going to be discussing any potential additions or changes that we might want to make to this. And I believe the last time this was amended was 2009 when Tricia, Mark Levy, Bob Hunt, Brett, and Marty were on the board. I don't know, there's a resolution number, I don't know what change they made to it at that time.
Is that accessible online?
Yeah, isn't our board policy on SMRPD.org?
I think it's on the website. It's in Dropbox.
I couldn't find it on the website. It's really not that accessible. So it's not identified clearly on the website.
Was it under agendas? I imagine the way it is, if you go over to that place on the right where it says info, that's where all the agendas and minutes and all that stuff is.
There's a whole section of minutes, but it's, from, I don't know, years and years.
one to
It's
look
not identified as the policy, so I don't know where it
So-
is in there.
So we probably should get that up on the website.
Yeah.
It's just a simple PDF. But if you
Okay.
want a copy of this,
It's in Dropbox.
okay.
Yeah,
Dropbox
this is Dropbox.
killed my computer. I had to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I have a PDF, scanned PDF. If anybody wants it, doesn't have it, you can email me, I'll send it to
I would
you.
do that. It would be nice to know what we're reading. And
Yeah, oh, it's interesting,
I'm sure
and it's an easy read, because it's not, and the language is simple, so you don't get buried or lost in it. So, it's good to know. Are we going to go over the last?
Kind of open, we can do any policies, or if anybody thinks of something that we aren't doing that we should have, or
Yeah, are there any requests for policies? I had a couple requests by email for policies. One we already talked about, which is the media policy, which I think we're going to talk about tonight. And then I had a couple of people ask about, one that came up recently was posting events. How to post events, what the process is. Another one that came up was facilities use, which we already have some forms that I found on the website. But the question was that, what is the policy on return of the cleaning deposit? Because they're waiting for their cleaning deposit back and they haven't gotten it yet, and so they want to know what's the timeline. So we probably should.
Was that Laurel by any chance?
I think
Laurel
so.
Ward
Yeah, I
should
talked
on
to her
it.
about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the deal is if they don't, they're supposed to, as it states in the agreement, they're supposed to send a stamped addressed envelope with the check. And if they don't, then we're not gonna send the stamp, we're not gonna click the stamp and do all that. So
Okay.
we just rip up the check and throw it away.
So you
Okay.
just don't cash it.
Well, yeah, we wouldn't cash it, it's a
Oh,
deposit,
alright.
it's a deposit for them.
The recreation facility contract is kind of a separate policy. It's not within this board policy. And that's kind of where, did you get a copy of that?
That is on the website.
I didn't bring it with me,
Yeah, I
but
think so. I think it's on the
that
website.
should be in there. And that is,
Facilities, it's the use agreement?
Yes.
yeah, the
Yeah.
more recent one that
I think
Lisa
this,
worked
yeah,
on.
I
Okay.
copied that off the website, and then this was, I guess, in the emails from Lisa.
Can I?
Yeah,
That's
sure.
what that said.
And this is, I think this is what was, see, this looks different from what's on the website. This is what she
It could
had.
be the old one on the website and the new one may
Right.
have not made it.
Yeah, when I looked at the website, it seems like everything's from 2012, a little bit from 2013, but
Because it would mainly, it would be a lot about this, because she got language from the attorney and our Capri insurance on what to have on there. And that would be the new one.
yeah, so these were the two newest documents that I found. I think that says something about Capri too, doesn't it? It says something. Maybe this one said something about Capri in the cover letter.
Okay. Because we can talk about we have to have a recreation meeting also later on this month when it works out for us. And we gotta look over the recreation use of the facilities and all of that. So maybe you want to move that one to that meeting?
Yeah, I think so. This is a lot to do with that, I think.
Yeah,
And,
it's not really outlined in here. We don't have
Okay.
anything on,
let's see, the other thing was media contact, we already talked about that, posting events, and conflict of interest, which I was really surprised that there was nothing in our district policy for conflict of interest. So,
well, this goes like on top of other things, like what we were talking about, and that was another thing I didn't even mention, that's the FPPC, we're under that too. That's a state of California conflict of interest for public officials. So we already are under that.
okay.
So I don't think it would be redundant to put that text in our board policy, don't you think? Okay.
I mean, yeah, because there's a lot of state law about how we have to run, and so there's no good reason
Although-
to make it here if it's already there.
Although to clarify it, what you might want to do is have a statement somewhere in the policies that says the
follow that
SMRPD conflict of interest policy shall be compatible with
Right.
state law.
Yeah.
Good idea.
But you could
The
say that about
particular
anything,
interest
right?
was use of the website.
Say it follows something like that.
So maybe the particular interest that I got was use of the website. So it's conflict of interest with use of the website, or for like Christmas in the Canyon, the board members not on the flyers, not having their names on the flyers, and an ad in the newsletter, those kind of things. Which I don't know that it specifically addresses those things in the.
FPPC does.
FPPC does.
Okay.
Then
Yeah.
if they pay for an ad, they still can't put it on
You'll,
a board
No.
member? Even if they pay for it with their own funds, they can't?
Yeah, we
For
can do
their
that, our
business.
attorney said.
Okay, I just wondered, I don't know
What's that?
the law.
We can, like when Tom had an ad in last year or this year, that was the one thing that came back that was fine to do because the ad page was paid for.
Right, that's
In
what I'm
other words,
saying.
he's supporting SMRPD
Right,
rather than
Well,
trying to
you
get
can have an
SMRPD.
ad as long as it's not listed as a board member in the paper.
And he probably can't put it in the ad either, because that would be advertising.
He can only be listed once in the whole paper.
Right.
Because I did ask the attorney,
Okay.
special district meeting.
So that's why he didn't put the
Put-
same stuff
right.
in this year that we did the
Right.
first year, because we can't do that.
it was
Okay.
quite different. There were changes to the newsletter this year.
Did the attorney specifically say he could have one thing, a board member could have one thing in
You can only have their name listed once.
Because when we asked Betsy and she talked to FPPC, she said he could have an ad because the ad could be construed as a separate part of the document, flyer, poster, whatever went out. So she was okay with him putting his name in somewhere else.
I would think if the ad was paid for,
It
then
doesn't
that
matter.
would be.
No, that's what,
Doesn't?
that's
Yeah, it
what she,
doesn't matter.
no, that's what she said, because the ad was paid for, it got by. I mean, the best thing would be to do once, period.
Right. I specifically gave them the scenario,
Okay.
so. and I think Tom and I talked about it, but, you know, that's why I went out differently this time.
Good.
So,
One of the things that I was concerned about was attendance. There's no policy on attendance, as far as I know, and what constitutes, I think there may be a phrase somewhere about approved absences, but I don't think that there's a definition of how something is approved. Does that mean he can call his mother and say, hey, I can't be there, and she gives me permission, or what is
No,
it?
it's
You know?
under, that's where it's under the state law part, attendance is,
But it's pretty vague. We talked about it and, it says, it basically says after 3 consecutive absences, the board.
this is a committee meeting, everybody should come up here and not be so far away.
We
I
want to,
invite, that's why I invited
We
everybody to
wanna
come
hear
up
you
and
breathe.
sit, because if you wanna be able to talk and get, you know, it's not so formal tonight.
They asked me to
It's a
come up.
committee meeting, not a regular meeting.
yeah.
So, but going back, the state law trumps anything we put in our policy. And so the state law says you can't have more than 3 unexcused absences.
But it doesn't say what those
What is excused?
excuses should be. It just, it gives the board the power to decide whether or not to excuse those.
I'm not quite sure that's
That's
true.
the Special District Act, that's what I read, I brought it in a couple times. I
Because
didn't
when
bring it tonight.
when it came up a while ago, I asked Betsy, I go, so what do we do here? And she goes, well, why isn't he there? I go, well, he's out for his job. She goes, jobs are excused absence.
Mm-mm.
That's what the attorney said.
Well, I went online today on just Googling, city councils and whatever that have attendance policies, and it's been something that a lot of councils have started to do because they didn't have them before. And, there's quite a few, that I found just online that you could click on and see what their policy was. And, I wrote one, if anybody wants to,
We
me to read it.
We operate under a different law than city councils operate.
Oh, I know we do, I know, I'm just talking about letters, there was verbiage.
But at this point, we're just doing a list of what policies we want to discuss, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to throw that out. That
Okay.
there's an ambiguity, at least in my mind, and I think a lot of other people's mind, about how do you constitute an excused absence and what's realistic for there to be, you know, how many even excused absences are reasonable. Like, if somebody was out for 6 months in a row, even if it's excused, I mean, even if it's a tragic situation, are they really performing their responsibility?
Right. I have it's just a working thing, a proposal of what we could have, and I think it makes a lot of sense. It says, I would want to see it say, SMRPD board directors shall miss no more than 2 regularly scheduled board meetings per quarter. In the event a board director is absent for a 3rd meeting within a quarter, any other board director shall have the power to schedule a review at the next regularly scheduled council meeting, SMRPD meeting, to discuss whether or not the 3rd missed meeting meets the requirements for excuse. Valid excuses for missed meetings shall include death of a family member, family or personal illness, inclement weather, accident, scheduled vacations, and unusual and unforeseen circumstances, which is pretty vague, but it allows for weird stuff that might happen. If personal illness becomes a disability that inhibits a director from attendance at meetings, then that director's seat shall become vacant after 6 consecutive missed meetings. Something to work
Well,
from.
that didn't say anything about the jobs, if you're calling.
No,
out
it
for
wouldn't,
your
these
job.
would be excused. If you,
But-
my feeling is if you want to be a public servant, part of that public service is attending the hearings for the agency and talking to and listening, receiving information from your public, because that's kind of what you're wanting to do and why you're here.
Well, I
And if
understand
you
that.
then take a job that takes you away from that, my feeling is you should, if you're gonna be gone a lot, you should hand that over. You know,
There's actually a.
vacate the seat.
There's an incompatibility of office doctrine, California Code 1126. That says California officials cannot engage in any employment or activity which is in conflict with their duties as a local agency officer or with the duties and responsibilities of the agency that they may be employed with. And it lists the typical kind of things that an employee would do that's a conflict of interest, but it also says time demands that interfere with the performance of their duties to make them less efficient employee. In other words, they can't, an officer or an employee cannot take on responsibilities that would impair their ability to do their job.
So are we discussing this?
Yeah, we're discussing.
Okay, well, I specifically asked the attorney about it, and she didn't agree with what you're saying.
It's California code.
I'm
Maybe
sorry,
we need
I'm
a,
just telling you what she said, so we might have to go back
yeah,
and
we
find out
need
why.
an opinion, probably some kind of formal opinion. But, I mean, if they're not here for three consecutive meetings in a quarter,
There's only three.
That's
in it.
three and a
there's
quarter.
only 3 and a quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is, I think that something needs to be done, but I think it needs.
That
to-
is lengthy, especially.
I think it needs to be simple. I think that what's needed is what's there already, but with the definition of what constitutes an approved absence. Because right now, it looks to me like any absence anybody wants to request to be approved is approved. And I don't think that's, and I also think that, so I think, you know, maybe a little delineation of what absences would be approved and how much notice needs to be given. The other thing is the question of whether or not the board should vote on approving absences. There are some boards, a lot of boards bringing this up for vote so that there's a public record of who approved the absence and who didn't.
They're supposed to be done at every time there's an absence. It has to, it's supposed to be listed as excused or unexcused
Right,
in the minutes.
yeah. But then the question is there a vote to excuse the members who are absent taken with a record of who voted?
Or more generally, you know, how do you decide what's excused and what's not?
Right,
Whoever it is.
yeah.
So I guess one of my concerns is I'm seeing that from discussions I had with Shay about how this came about, is that we're going to apply things differently to different people. So in the past, when Marty was on the board, Marty had way more than 3 unexcused absences, and nobody raised a complaint and said, you know, that's your 3rd one, you're off the board. And so now we have Ron, whose absences are, you know, I think led to where this is. And he's doing more work behind the scenes than any of us are doing. So I'm a little concerned or wondering why everybody was giving Marty a pass, but now you don't want to give Ron a pass when Ron's actually doing a lot of us behind
Well,
the scenes
I
work.
think
Well,
that.
if that was wrong in the past, that doesn't mean that that's
It has
a
to
reason
be
to
right.
do it wrong in the future.
Right.
But
It's obviously a problem that needs to be taken care of, whether it was under Marty, brought about because of Marty or Ron.
It's definitely a problem that has been brought to the attention to the board now, and I think it needs to be discussed and worked out.
No, well, we all knew that Marty had unexcused absences and it exceeded his absences, and people gave him a pass on it.
I
But
think that
But that still goes back to what the attorney told me, was that excused absence is work is an excused absence, so we'll get something from her about that.
Well, Linda, you should, because Attorney Betsy isn't infallible, I would send her that code that you just read.
yeah, okay.
So that she's
Yeah,
aware of
yeah,
it.
because
If you
I
take-
was looking to see if there was some definition about what constitutes.
Linda, what is that code?
It's California Code 1126. It's called Incompatibility of Office Doctrine.
And nobody can keep up with all the damn, I mean, you've seen the code, it's huge.
Yeah. Now, where I found that is there's a really handy thing that I bookmarked years ago that is kind of a reference for special districts that lists kind of all of the different codes, California codes that pertain to the special districts, whether or not it has to do with your formation like the Park District,
Right.
or whether or not it has to do with, and it's organized, the handy thing about it is it's organized by topic. So there's it says conflict of interest, and it cites the California code, gives you a summary.
Right, and where it is. It'll go. Well, I think I can't remember who made the point, but I think to the point, if somebody raises an issue or they wanna know what the policy is on something, I think we should address it in one form or another. If it's in the code, if it's in the policy somewhere else or in some policy document, like conflict of interest or attendance, if it's in the policy somewhere else, we should address it and bring it to the board as a policy issue. And then just, if we have some discussion on it, we should just get an opinion from the attorney. And if it's already addressed sufficiently, I guess we'll have to vote as a board. I mean, I would suggest that we vote as a board to say, do we want to just accept the policy the way it's written on conflict of interest or attendance in the general policy or in the policy for the district, or do we want to elaborate on it and give it some more guts?
I think, I would hope that you would at least have the absences brought to the board for vote approval. So that if, that way, that there's a formal record of how this approval got approved, you know, that they're not, you know, writing in the sand somewhere, I'm not gonna be there and that's okay. So, and to get to your point about Marty, I don't know, exactly what Marty's attendance record was, but I think his absence was mostly towards the very end of his term. And,
Actually, he missed a few meetings at the very beginning, but I don't think they went over 3.
yeah, but I think he was burned out and very unhappy. And, you know, I think that it probably would have been brought to the board's attention had it not been so close to.
The bottom line is, though, that things change. So if you accept a position on any organization, and then you accept a new job, and you realize that that job is going to stop you from fulfilling your obligations to that position, then you should make a decision yourself and say, I cannot fulfill the job that I have accepted because of these changes. Everyone's lives change, whether it's death, illness, or jobs or whatever. And I mean, that shouldn't, if you can't attend a certain amount of meetings that you have said you are going to do when you take this position, then something should be done.
I think though that Greg makes a good point, because, and I'll give you another example, I mean, the board meetings for my other board position at Laura's house are at 7 in the morning. And so, you know.
I wouldn't take that job.
Well, but I do a lot of work for Laura's house. I'm really, you know, fairly valuable to them on the fundraising committee and on different committees that they have behind the scenes, like on day to day. I do more than most board members on their board, put it that way. Probably more than 90% of their board
If you
members.
took another job, what would
Hold
you
on.
I'm making my point. Yeah, I'm making my point. So I've said, you know, if you have somebody else who's more valuable than me, and you want me to take a back seat because I'm not able to attend all the meetings, but their point was, no, because you do 90% of the work on the board, we want to excuse your absences when you have absences.
I'm sorry, but that is not.
Yeah, but a 501c3 isn't the same as the SMRPD.
It's not the same case. It's
Yeah,
not
it's
the same.
apples and oranges.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not the same thing.
yeah.
But I'm just
But it's a good
making the
point.
point. I'm making the point.
Well, there's nothing to prevent Ron from being on a committee and serving on a committee and continuing to do all of the good work that he's doing.
Well, and I think it then boils down to the definition of an excused absence and what it is. And now he's not traveling as much, so it might not be an issue.
So great, he's changed his schedule from what I hear. And when he's been back, the last meeting he was here and
Well, it's
doing a lot of work.
You know, it goes back to the issue of a lot of policies that you're gonna deal with, I think, have to do with not just setting up rules and regulations for what you're doing, but to establish an expectation of conduct that should be applicable well into the future.
I agree.
For the future.
I absolutely
Well
agree.
said.
Yeah.
And the
On
other-
all levels.
And we keep going back to what kind of expectations are there and what are the codes of conduct, you know, and you should be rising above.
Yeah.
You should be doing the least you can do if there's a public perception.
The
that you
question
need
of
to be-
impropriety in any
Right.
way.
It's like you need to exceed the expectations for conflict of interest, you need to exceed the expectations for, because the implication of impropriety is just as bad as impropriety.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
Agreed.
where problems.
Now, on other boards, we're allowed to call in, so of course I call in, so I'm excused from being there physically, but I'm still there on the conference call. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, it is, that's illegal, it's board
I don't-
attendance.
But I don't
Okay.
know if it's in the policy, so if you want to make that approved attendance, you might want to add it to the policy.
Okay.
Attendance shall be in
'cause there's-
electronic or,
There's nothing attendance on here.
right, you may want to put that in there, that it may be electronic or in person.
Well-
See, that's in the state law, right?
And-
Yeah.
And so if you're gonna do
Well,
that,
yeah.
I would like to see conflict of interest written into here too.
Yeah.
That's kind of my point. I think it should be addressed, so I'm in agreement with you. But I think that we should address other things like conflict of interest in here, if we're gonna do that.
Now, are we gonna put things in here that are already part of state law?
If,
Do we
like
need-
I said,
so I'm thinking, do we need to put it in our
No, I would think,
policy?
like you said earlier, just put the reference to, you know, state
Unless
law,
it's
blah, blah,
not
blah, blah, blah.
specific
You don't
enough.
need to
I-
Yeah.
repeat
Yeah.
it.
Or we wanna
Because
hide-
that way, when the state law changes, this automatically changes.
Yeah.
And if there's new technology and Skype and whatever, it will automatically be changed when the state law changes.
And it's more likely the state law will update faster than we'll think to
Exactly.
update. Yeah.
And that way, it's already done.
But what we should do though is make sure there's a reference
Why?
in the
Yeah,
policy. that
just
says-
so if anybody has any questions,
They can
it's
refer
not
to
an issue, they know
state
where to
law.
go look
Right.
it up.
You know, sometimes what's said is something along the lines of, any issues that are not addressed in this policy will follow California law.
So you could say that once at the top and then not mention all these other things.
Yeah, except that there may be some critical things like the conflict of interest or other things that are highly sensitive topics that you may want to address at the end and say the California code applies here.
Well, sometimes the California code, you know, like, leaves a lot of leeway, so I could see, you know, being more specific. But just to say, see the California code, well, that's a waste of a sentence, I think.
Yeah. I'm good at wasting seconds. I waste
Well,
a lot
under,
of seconds.
under our meetings, and it said, you know, pursuant to government code section, blah, 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 pursuant to government code, all under the meetings.
What page?
The,
Yeah, in
that's
accordance with government code, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it should refer to it.
page
So, I
9.
agree with that.
Does it say government code or does it cite the specific code?
It
Cites
cites the
the
specific
specific
code,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
we could do
54954, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I think it should, yeah, I think it should say that.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm gonna leave a minute. May I bring up one thing for policy that I'd like to start talking about, and that's ADA requirements. We do have ADA requirements for publishing large print agendas, large print minutes. We have not had a need for having a signer because no one has contacted me with a problem for the deaf. If that ever comes, we would have to get that for all public meetings. But you might want to think in the future, I'm not insisting on anything now, that the website also be made ADA compliant, which means larger print, larger speaking tools for the blind, you know, things like that. That is going to be something that is going to happen in the future, that all public organizations and websites are going to have to be compliant.
So I thought on my computer, I make the size whatever size I want it to be.
Right.
You can, but that does not make this organization ADA compliant. And there's a difference. I can give you the rules and the regulations, I can send you all the ADA laws on that. I'm not asking for anything now, I'm asking that we keep these things in mind.
Yeah, but what I want to understand is, where do you draw the line on how big that they have to be? Because you got so many varying visual problems.
There
Who
should
do you
be-
Who do you decide where you have to accommodate
I
Scott
can do
because he
the, I
can't
can
see
do
it
the
all?
research. There should be a special button type of thing where somebody who needs large print can go to an off-site to read the minutes in a larger print, that type of thing. There are a lot of laws covering computers and all of that. I have not yet reviewed them all and gone through it. I'm not saying that we should do this now. I'm saying this is something we should look into for the future. One thing I would like to see are maybe some copies of the minutes and the agenda printed out in larger print. And that's something that's pretty standard for any public meetings anymore.
Because I've never seen that at the Board of Supervisors meeting.
They should.
I have a question though, I mean, that's kind of a specific as opposed to a policy.
Right.
And if we're talking about what policies we need to change or adapt or whatever, and I know that there's probably, is there in the policies anywhere that we will be compliant with ADA requirements?
Nothing in there.
That's maybe what it should say then.
That's all I'm saying,
Okay.
is let's kind of start
And then
looking into it. I haven't
Cite
yet
California
even.
code for, okay.
Okay.
And I'll look into exactly what needs to be done and refer it to the board, whatever I find. It's just, right now I'm in the middle of a remodel also and, the co-ed thing and all of that. But it's just something that all public meetings and all public organizations are going to have to start adapting to. If we ever do get someone with a problem with hearing and wants to attend the meeting, we would always have to provide signage for them if they need it. Like I said, I have not been broached on that particular problem yet or anything.
Being that we're a government agency, if anything becomes a mandate of the state, won't we get a notification of it?
Right.
I will look through and see what the state laws are and things, but the one thing I would like to see is, as this generation is getting older and having trouble reading, is possibly 2 or 3 or 4 large type agendas and meetings being printed out. And that's something that's pretty standard for all meetings, for people who might need them. I know, even with my glasses, I have trouble reading just regular standard print sometimes. So these are just things I'd like to bring up to think about and discuss for the future.
Yeah, that's helpful. Judy, the one suggestion I would make to you is, you're nice about saying, I'm not making an issue of it now, but, and I think that's not as helpful as you might think.
Well, I'm just saying
Because-
these are coming up.
I know.
Yeah.
What I think I would need, and I'm assuming that the board needs, is something specific, some clarity about what works and what doesn't work, and a willingness to work with people, like Greg when he says, but don't computers enlarge the type anyway, and figure it out so that
There are, and I haven't even done all the research and the things, I have kind of glazed over them myself, standards for making websites ADA compliant. I don't know the rules and regulations yet. I just haven't done it.
Is this gonna be an ongoing committee?
We
Would
can.
you be willing in the future, when things come to your attention that are specific,
I will
about
send it on to you.
type size or lack of stairs, to stairs or whatever, would you just
I
zip
just
an email to the policy committee?
I just attended a 4-day intensive emergency management class for access and functional needs, given by a national organization, that handles all this stuff. And this is some of the things that were brought up definitely for emergencies and stuff. It doesn't do any good, like you say, to have alarms going off if somebody is deaf.
Right.
That type of thing. Then you need bulletin boards instead of radios and this kind of stuff. And it was brought up that community meetings and, just like any other public meetings, we have to adapt as things are needed. Like I said, as of yet, nobody has come to me and said, I can't hear, I need a signer for the meeting. And if that ever happens, then we would have to deal with that. And that's all I'm letting you know, is that in the future, we're going to have to work on some of these things.
Well, I have a general policy on that, so I can pull it out and we can look at it.
Yeah, just look at it for as
I've
far as,
listed it on the list.
that's all I'm asking is to look into it. Like I said, I haven't even got the time right now, to do the intensive
I put it on the
research I'd
list,
like
so
to do.
we'll address it.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna leave you guys now.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We do have a policy under the goal 2.4 to relate activities to the physical, mental, social, and emotional characteristics of the citizens within the district.
But there's nothing that says we're gonna comply. Yeah. I'm assuming that's what you think, so as long as
It
they
does.
comply with ADA.
Because, yeah, it addresses all the different disabilities and what you can do as far as where you can go for the resources. So we'll bring it up and I'll drag it out and we'll look at it next time.
Can you adjourn a minute and we take a break? We're gonna take a 5-minute break.
There in your trailer?
Yeah. Are they making popcorn? We can have popcorn.
Sandwiches and half an hour.
All right.
I had another thing I want, well, let's, if we could talk about for a minute how we could be using our signboards more effectively, because when I saw that lady's thing about, could you advertise my Zumba class, I'm like, yeah, and then it's like, well, then how often and who, and so we could come up with some, I wonder if we should, that doesn't even maybe have to be a policy, that should just be under the committee to say, advertise stuff for a few days or a week and then switch them, because the more we switch what the sign says, everybody's gonna look at it more.
Well, I think that we need procedures, is really what we're talking about.
That's more a procedure than a policy.
Yeah, I mean, there might be a policy statement, which is a very short statement in the body of this, but then we need an operating procedure. It's what it sounded like.
So, procedure-wise, I think let's do what the lady asked, let's see who in our schedule could stand to benefit from some advertising.
Well, I looked at the Google Calendar, because Steve and I have been doing that, and there's a lot of events going on that they wouldn't want to or need to put on there. So the actual classes at this facility that are open, that are allowing people to show up that would benefit from it, there's only 2. So it'd be really easy to do that.
Probably more than that, though. I mean, there's the Zumba, there's the yoga.
The yoga's in Majeska.
Oh,
But
All
we-
the yoga
no,
classes
There's a
are
sign
in
in
Majeska.
Majeska.
But we could still do, it still wouldn't hurt to put the yoga thing here and the Zumba thing there, because,
Yeah.
like where I live in Majeska, the thing about the fire department Christmas party is like a half a block up. And I saw it, but I forgot to go. And I'm like,
it's not the way you go in.
yeah, I mean, it's past where my house is, so
Well,
put something on both
Who
of them.
updates that sign?
Bev
That
does
does a
it.
lot.
But
That
that's what I'm
keeps all
saying,
the
but
letters.
is she gonna be able to do that every other day to keep it up?
No, we're talking like once a week, maybe once a week we put Zumba on both, and then the other week we could put
Well,
yoga on both.
the other
Or,
thing is, it's helpful to put on there occasionally when the AA meetings are, or when if there's a, what other are the events that are going on there? Public events, but not,
But the,
I
but
asked
the
about it,
regularly
somebody said
scheduled
they
things
probably
are in
wouldn't
our
want it up.
brochure.
I thought AA wouldn't want,
yeah, they said, no, we're private, we don't want.
because then it would say Thursday and people would drive by and look at it, oh, but people
There's-
that, oh,
there's
there.
Joe's car.
That's what I thought.
Oh, yeah, Phil didn't come today.
I
There's
didn't
Debbie's
think
car.
about the small town aspect.
And then I just wasn't sure about if the gun
Because a lot of
class would be in
churches,
there, because.
you know, a lot of churches and stuff that have AA meetings, a lot of churches will put on their boards. Well, they'll put on their
So-
boards things
The
about AA.
ICL meeting would be
Unless you're
something.
invited.
they could
Yeah,
put up.
ICL
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah,
We
That
could put, we could put our meeting up on the 3rd week, And we could put the other stuff up the rest of the time.
Yeah.
I just think that kiosks are underused and they're such a valuable resource.
Well, and I
there's
agree,
plenty
like
of
you
room.
say, if they're changed often, people will
People
learn
will
to
look.
read them, but when
Yeah.
it still says
Yeah.
CTI volunteers from a month ago,
Well, we may
people
need to
are
help
throwing it out.
Bev, I don't think she doesn't really get
Well,
paid to
that's
do
why
that.
I-
We've gotta
that's why I
add
was
that to her
asking to
list
get
of
it in the logistics.
responsibilities.
You were volunteering? Is that
No.
what you said?
And if we were gonna ask her to do that more
How about I
often,
agree
we
to
probably
do it
wanna
when I'm
pay her
home?
some.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we could let Steve do this one and, but let's do, because that would be good for the Zumba lady if we did
It
that.
would
A
be
lot of
great.
people don't know that's going on, really.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going
She
on.
just started
I got the
again.
email.
I didn't either.
She just, I talked to her last night, she just started again and wants to, you know, give people a little bit of a break on the charge and try to get more people. And it's this Thursday, tomorrow night is class at 7:45.
Why don't you-
Some of Joel's heights.
why don't you find out what she wants to
There's
say?
too many of those.
You know, but one every now and then, just for some variety.
Mhm. Yeah, for variety.
Well, that's why I think we need,
But
you know,
no,
a procedure. Maybe we do
Yeah.
one, I don't know, one a month, not make it too difficult on
No,
Bev.
I do it more than one a month, people quit looking.
That's another volunteer.
You mean a different,
Yeah.
you mean.
Changing it.
Change
Change
the words.
it one.
I mean,
Oh,
change the
no,
words,
you wanna change it.
change the words like every
Really?
week. Yeah.
How often do we change them now?
Well, that's the problem, is we aren't
When
utilizing
there's an
it.
event or whatever,
Well,
right now they
yeah,
just
you would
say,
still always use
Merry
it for an
Christmas.
event, you know, you do
Yeah.
it for the Easter breakfast
Like
or
it still
the
says
fair
Christmas
or the
and
Yeah.
everything out there.
you know.
That'll
Yeah.
work for-
You guys are rolling in dough.
And
Pay,
there's-
pay Bev a little bit.
I say we
and
pay
have her
Bev
do it.
more, but, you know, I'm not making a proposal.
Yeah.
But, and just add that to her responsibility list. She likes doing it, it's just, you know, it's time
Give her a
consuming.
buck or two more.
You guys are doing that, you know what activities are up, just randomly
Yeah.
assign some and nobody gets too many, and if somebody
Yeah.
complains, say, throw them in the rotation and throw somebody out. It'd be really good. for
I
us.
just would wanna focus on the things that people can actually attend,
Oh, I think
because
so,
we
yeah.
won't have the
Do an
room.
advertising
And then,
package.
like Ron said in the email, and then go to smrpd.org for class schedules.
Okay,
Yeah.
so are we gonna say they have to request it? What's the procedure? Because I
We
think we
help
need.
them out. We need money. The more people that go to their classes, the
Okay.
more money we make.
All right, well, I can
So help
try
them
to
out.
put a procedure together and
Yeah.
bring it to the committee. Do you want me to do it?
Be a good idea.
And so how often do you want to do it?
Weekly,
Weekly?
if possible.
Okay.
May not be possible.
Cause if it says Zumba Thursday night, 7:45, and yoga, blah, 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 and maybe 3 things, and smrpd.org for more info. We could leave that up for
That could stay up for a while, then,
a
yeah.
while, and,
Or hike, change it to hike once in a while.
yeah.
At
See
least
what's-
And then there's
change it-
2 sides of the
At
kiosk.
least change it every time something's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, we're gonna need more letters.
Yeah.
We'll need more
Thank
letters.
you.
We
for
will need more letters to
volunteers.
do this, because it's always kind of stuff like that.
Then why don't you see if
And
you
they're getting old.
get different colors?
Well, we need new ones.
No, I'm
Yeah.
saying
We need
on
to authorize-
letters, Aren't you, you just have black letters, maybe you can have some, a variety or something.
And they do
Let's
have them.
do agenda items for the next
They
meeting.
do have them, so.
Let's
And
see
it
that
would be
policy on letter
authorized.
colors.
Policy on the colors.
Authorize some money for Beth to buy new letters.
Yeah.
Yeah, have her do an inventory. I mean, there was a giant stack of
They always run out of E's.
I think all the F's and the U's in the season case get stolen.
They do. No one's messing,
So I
no
know-
one's gonna mess with those signs, but
But will we have a fairness issue if we do that in Silverado? Are we gonna, or do we use the Majesta one for the same thing, but it's out on San Diego now?
Use both. I
Yeah.
think they should both be the same.
Okay.
So people going in Majeska see it from
See it
either
from
way.
the outside the road, not in front of the community center.
Oh, yeah, it needs to be out there. What
Well,
if
that's
it,
where it is.
what if it came around the corner a little bit, but no one's complaining about it, let's just leave it there.
If we do a policy on that, then we should, or procedure, then it, I think they, since they belong to the SMRPD and there's plenty of SMRPD stuff to put on there and we're gonna utilize them better, then it should be limited to SMRPD. not other things
Yeah,
going
I
on in the
agree.
canyon. Do you agree?
I agree.
I mean, there's other ways to post signage for things,
But what about like for ICL meeting, which is
but that's at SMRPD,
No,
No.
when it's here,
oh, it's when it's in the
Yeah, but
building.
that's
when it's in the building.
PD should
Okay.
not
Oh, you
pay
mean
for it.
Well,
them
but
to
then like,
post it.
so like the concerts would be posted because they're on
That's
the,
SMRPD.
on the property.
Right,
If they're public,
yeah.
And
It's a
on the
pub-
property.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
Not a private party
Right,
that
right,
schedules here, just some, or,
yeah,
well, the classes are private, but they're open to the public and they generate income for us, so we would want to promote those.
I have a sticky question. Procedures, we're very much in agreement that some things are policies and some things are procedures. And policies are kind of the global, we shoulds kind of things, and the procedures are the day-to-day operating things. We don't want to burden this document with procedures. But I'm inclined to think that committees should be able to develop procedures and operate with procedures as needed. I know this is kind of going out on a limb, but unless it is so global that it affects the image and the operations of the district as a whole, and I can't think of an example right now, but you guys are helping out, like when the recreation committee wants to.
just let the committees do their own thing.
Yeah, let
Yeah.
people do their jobs and not have to bring every little detail about how they're gonna operate and how they're gonna work their forms or how they're gonna do stuff. And, you know, you're gonna make mistakes and people are gonna complain, and so you say, oh, that stupid committee did that, and that will tell them to change it.
I don't know if it's so much about that. I think that people, we brought this up because people wanted some guidance and some parameters to, so that they didn't have to go out and recreate the wheel every time they went to hold a committee meeting or do something.
Well, I think that's what procedures are for.
Yeah, that's procedures.
Procedures are for, to create what's known as institutional knowledge.
Right.
You know, you gotta have that, and somebody say, oh, you're leaving, I'm leaving,
Right.
you're coming in, here's the book.
Right, right.
Save you 4 weeks worth of time.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think a committee should have the freedom to do their work without being micromanaged.
There's nothing in the policies saying that right now.
Well, let's go to the more exciting one. How about, let's talk about the press release.
Yeah, because that's how this came up.
Yeah. Now we can get more sticky.
Okay, good.
So I thought, Shay and I had talked at some point after she got on the board about that we would run the press releases by the whole board. And everybody, you know, somebody said, oh, that's awful, don't do that. And so I kind of like that idea, and I guess if we were gonna make it more formal, it should say, I got a press release, here's what I wanna send out. If you don't respond in 24 hours, that means you must like it, and it's going. But I think that's better than just sending it to 1 or 2 board members. So I think for everybody's comfort level, it should go to the whole board.
I actually wanted that years ago. Before I was on the board, I asked the board in emails, letters, why flyers, newspapers, and all of that weren't being run through the board, and they were being created and sent out with public funds to the public. And
Well, I
Because of what you
think,
just said.
yeah, I think that's what Linda just said. That's
You
a
let the
committee
committee
issue.
screw up, and then you slap them and say, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So that's
yeah,
why
but
we're,
that's board correspondence, not just from the committee.
Well, maybe
It
what
was
we do,
from the Depends on what it is.
maybe we have to make a list. That's a good point.
Maybe, it depends on what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the calendar is a really important thing for to show that the SMRPD is doing their work. Here's what we have available to you, and it should come out on a quarterly basis. And I think initial designs come up and they're good, and the board collaborates on that. But once it's done, then the Recreation Committee puts it out, bam, bam, bam. They may want to send it out to the board before it goes out and says, do you see any typos? Do you see anything wrong? And then please get back to me by within 24 hours or
20
whatever.
hours, yeah.
But just assume that, I think almost any time you're initiating something new, you need to build its credibility and build the trust and reliance on it.
But we've changed topic from press release to other
Well,
stuff, so let's
The press,
talk about both. I mean, finish what you were saying, and then let's go back to the press.
just that, I don't know that every little detail is gonna go out to the public needs to get full review.
Well,
But I think
But
to
for
the
instance,
point, we just need to make a list of documents that need to go to the
Okay.
attorney.
I would be happy with that, because remember when a flyer went out and all of a sudden people stormed the meeting because there was a whole new logo. And then, wait a minute, and then we went into this whole logo thing, and had that gone through board review, at least 2 board directors would have said, hey, that's not our logo, no,
But
no,
that
no.
was a stupid mistake by one board member.
I know, but board review would have kept that whole thing from happening.
Maybe and maybe not. Maybe the board.
If the
member-
board was paying attention.
Yes, maybe the board members would have said, oh, the body of that looks fine. Okay with me. And they would have never said anything.
Oh, I'd read it for typo, but I don't think I would have noticed the
Yeah.
outside of it, so
So,
yeah.
you know, it's like, some people are just gonna have to face the music for their stupid mistakes.
So I'm thinking that, what do you guys think, is that review certain number of hours, nobody responds, and maybe 24 is too short because you're not always home, or,
Well, here's a question about that review. Is that a violation of the Brown Act?
no,
Okay.
because we're not discussing it, we're just saying, I don't like it, pull it. So that's my thought would be, somebody
Oh.
goes, that's an awful press release, don't send it, and then if it has to be discussed among more than 3 people, then we may have to have a meeting to talk about it.
Well, or if,
But if just
Well, we
you're,
can't approve any kind of policy.
well, we're just saying, this is,
We can
here's,
approve on
here's the press release, and I say, I don't like it. Then it
Yeah.
has to get pulled, and I get to call you and say, I think this is awful, what you did, and and if we come to an agreement, the new one goes out and nobody complains. But it does have to happen, I mean,
Yeah, press
I told
releases are-
Tom this was
yeah.
I told Tom we were gonna talk about this, and he's like, look, press releases have to go out.
They do.
Timely.
They can't go out, and it can't be 4 weeks later, or it can't, so maybe the 24 hours needs to stay,
Yeah.
but.
Well,
but
And it's
my-
going to the public, so the Brown Act protects the public information with the board, and it's very clear that the
But
board.
isn't it anytime you have a majority of the board in communication, it has to be public?
Only if you're talking about something. So if,
Only if you're making a decision.
making a decision.
yeah, so she has a press release.
Or something that will become a decision.
And I get it, and I go, oh, why did you say that? That's just, and then I go back and I say, so the 2 of us are talking and no one else has complained about it, so we're happy, then it goes out. If it becomes an issue and we're arguing about it, and they go, no, what you're saying is wrong, we wanted to say it, then we might have to have a quick meeting to,
It's like if it gets
argue
into
about
the
it.
level of a policy or something that impacts the image of the organization, then people, is it gonna cause an uproar? But,
Something non-routine.
yeah, I'm wondering about having a designated media person.
no,
We do.
we
That's
already
what's in the
have that, that's
policy.
the problem.
Is it by name?
The president.
Well,
Is that a policy?
That's what the incident policy was already. That, well, the way it was explained to me is the policy already is that the president and one other person have to review the press release before it goes out right now. It doesn't go out to the whole board.
I mean,
The president and one other director?
One other director, I didn't get it.
Or
quick
maybe
enough
one
to
other
stop it.
director. President, one other
It
director.
went through my email, and I'm like,
And it went to 3 of them, but
And
I
I
think it didn't go to
it didn't
anybody
respond
else.
quick enough, so.
Right, and, but I think the 24 hours has to stay because then if you have to call a special meeting, you're talking about another.
No, we
Well-
don't have to have a meeting unless there's a big fight among the
No,
board
I know,
members
but
about
if
it.
there is a disagreement,
It'd have to be right away, and it would be
Right.
24 hours from that point.
not
I'm
24
not
hours.
sure this is being realistic. I think you're trying to create a policy for what was
Possible to have
a
that.
a personnel issue. and I'll try to put this as delicately as I can. I think that if the right people are designated as media contacts, you have the ability to write and release a media statement immediately. The problem was that a statement was written and was written by one person who was not authorized to be in contact with the media.
But he's the communications person.
He is,
Was reviewed by, no, that's not who wrote it. I thought Lisa wrote it.
Tom said he wrote it.
no,
He
Tom,
told me he
Tom
wrote
just
it.
took it straight off the campaign.
Tom wrote it.
Materials.
Well, who reviewed it?
Ron.
Ron,
And then it got sent out by Lisa.
Yeah,
So,
Ron,
Who's the
Ron,
yes?
Ron
That's
looked
what
through
I-
it, Ron missed typos, and he made another typo, which made it even worse.
Tom sent it out too,
And
but
then
I
it-
think
then it
Lisa
was
sent
sent
it out as well.
So basically, nobody else.
That's why I'm saying the whole board really needs to be in on it, and then it's the board member's responsibility
Yeah.
to catch it and
I
say
think we just
answer
need
right
to be
away.
more sensitive to reviewing it and looking at it.
See,
We shouldn't have been in that much of a hurry.
I think that you may need to have some proviso where the president has the authority.
Well, that's why
So I think
that's
that's
what I
already
did in
in
the
there.
policy.
But that doesn't mean that the president at any point is gonna be very smart, I mean, you never know.
All it says,
Well, for God's sake.
President
Look
shall
what you got.
preside
We
over
wouldn't
meetings,
teach
appoint
anybody that isn't
committees, call
smart enough
special
for the
meetings, and
job.
perform any other duties prescribed by law or board action. So,
Say that again?
under the president shall preside at board meetings, appoint committees, call special meetings, and perform any other duties prescribed by law or board action.
Yeah, but I think that when you talk about media contact, you need to have the designated person, somebody, you need to say who's designated to speak for the board.
Right now, Tom is a communication person.
And I think
On
that's
our
not
board.
exactly,
Well, and
Well, it's just,
I put
he's a
in,
communication guy.
yeah, really?
So that's why I
I'm
think the whole
sorry.
board should be reviewing it, because everybody is elected and you get what you get
But
elected.
you
and so
don't
that's-
write a policy over personnel matters,
I
it's just
know,
back to
we
what
should.
you just
Well,
said.
we have a policy that all board directors, in communication with the public, conduct district affairs in a manner that ensures public respect and support and guarantees the integrity of the district and the community.
That's in there now?
That's in there now.
Yeah.
Welcome suggestions and constructive criticism from the public. Represent the interests of the entire community responsibly and responsively.
That doesn't speak to what we're talking about right now.
And, well, the public respect, support, and guarantees integrity.
and this is the policy I
How does that,
proposed.
how does that
Do
impact?
you wanna hear it?
Oh, if something goes out.
Is that the same one that you had before?
Endangers the integrity of the district.
That's why it needs to be, all five of us should be, all
Yes.
5 board members should be at least
Yeah.
looking at it to
Right.
make sure no one made a bad mistake
Yeah.
that the other people didn't think about.
Yeah.
I also think that there should specific, if it's not, doesn't get the attention and approval of all of the board members, that it should get approval from the president before it goes out. I don't know if you want to say it that way, because that would be a violation of Brown Act requiring approval, but I think that you want to put in there that, something about that it requires approval of the president.
That's what I have. The president shall be notified prior to making any response to the meeting. The president will prepare a response or designate person who will make a response to the meeting. If the president is not available, the vice president will be the designate.
Official
You
responses.
need something like that. The problem I had with the way you wrote your thing originally was that it sounded like it was speaking for everybody in the community, speaking about and on behalf of SMRPD. And it sounded like, and I wasn't the only one that thought that. I had a lot of people say to me that it sounded like it was an attempt at a gag order.
The gag order?
Yeah.
Oh, that was somewhere down in that text farther.
Well, it was the volunteers, affiliates, and board employees, volunteers, affiliates, and board members, when to me, it should only apply to board directors.
Now, you've got a difference here, you're talking about media releases, news releases, and then you're talking about
Well-
talking to the media. That's a two
Two
different
different
things.
Well,
So-
the reason why we put, that was in there originally, I think, was because I was thinking that nobody can talk on behalf of the SMRPD but the president. So we didn't really want any volunteers or employees or
They-
anybody to talk on the behalf of the president.
But they
or the
can't
board.
anyway. I mean, they
Yeah.
can say what they
Yeah,
want, but
they can't.
the people at the press should know that they're not a board member, they're not speaking. Well, I see what
Well,
you're saying, though.
Or even if,
I think that they have in the past.
Well,
So I think that,
you can't,
so we have to address.
You know what we could have? We could have a policy that says that whoever's addressing the public, making statements has to say, these are my personal opinions, if it's not an actual board.
Yeah,
you can
okay,
do
so
that.
you could
cannot
say in
tell-
the policy,
you
no
can't tell the public
employee,
what to say.
volunteer, or affiliate will be talked on behalf of the board.
All you
I
can,
guess you can
all
say.
you can say
Well,
is.
We'll talk on
Without
behalf
board
of the
approval.
entire board.
The only what you can say is has to be kind of an affirmative thing. The persons who shall be designated to speak in behalf of SMRPD will be the following people. Any
Right,
statements,
Right, the
any
board,
statements.
anything from anybody else doesn't count, because it's not
Is
our
there, is
statement.
an expression, any statements from volunteers, blah, 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 are expressing their own personal opinion?
but it wouldn't control a board director that's going into a meeting with an agency or group representing
But you have,
themselves in the district, which we do all the time.
but
Yeah.
you still have to,
It
like, when you
should,
go
to
to
some
a,
extent.
Yeah, it should.
no, because when we go to a
Say that again,
meeting,
Linda. What did you just say?
the affirmative thing,
Yeah.
What did I say?
it's on tape.
So
Oh, it is? Let me rewind you.
The position of the board, the official position of SMRPD shall be, I don't know what I said, shall be represented only by the president in his or her absence, the vice president.
So if you send a delegate to some conference of park and rec associations that isn't the president, then
Or is designated.
Well,
Okay, so now, let's say Ron and I go and we meet, and we met Campbell in the past. When we were talking, if it was an official board policy that we were asking him about, we were clear on, we think this would be kind of cool. You know, we don't know if the whole board's gonna go for it, but what do you think? And then you talk back and forth, then we come back and we say, okay, is this a good board policy? And then we go back. So,
But that's not the issue, it's, say, for instance, the president going to a board of supervisor meeting, you know, and it's well known that he's the president of the SMRPD,
right,
and then, or she, and then he says, well, the SMRPD would like, or, you know, we on the SMRPD would like. So you can imply, without saying that I'm representing the board, because everybody already knows he's the president of the board. So whether or not he says, the board would like, he could say, you know, we on the, Silverado would like, or, you know,
yeah.
and the implication's still there.
Right, and to address your question, Scott, about going, somebody who's representing, going to a committee or going to some function somewhere, that's a really good reason why when somebody is a designated representative for SMRPD, it should be designated at a board meeting and given very clear parameters. You're going there to represent our discussion of Douglas firs. And here's our position on Douglas firs.
okay.
And it shouldn't differ.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, now that doesn't mean, because you can have your personal opinion, and so, like, when we would go to the board meeting, and we were talking about Abby stuff, we were really careful if it was what we thought,
My
or it
personal,
was
yeah.
what the board
And then I agree,
the board all agreed, that the board agreed that this is our position.
versus, this is what I feel.
Right. And yeah, you have to be really careful, that's what all of us need to think of, is, I don't know how you put it in the policy, but I'm speaking for myself, I'm a board member speaking for myself, not for the board.
Right.
And you got your thing, or you're giving the party line, which is kind of what you were talking about. Because you can't even gag the board members and say, oh, you just can't go talk to people.
No, because they get to be themselves anytime they want to be.
Right. But if you go and you imply that you're talking on behalf of the board, you have to be way more careful. And probably the president has to be carefulest.
I think that's fine, and I agree with all that, so that's why I sort of think that we don't need to say what you said about having a designated spokesperson, because for each situation, I think everyone understands who the designation, the person is, you know.
Well, you need a general contact person, designated person for those situations that you're not anticipating. You may not have discussed pine trees other than Douglas firs, and so somebody comes and asks Shay about
Noble firs.
noble firs.
Oh,
Really different
Pines
issue.
aren't- pines
And we
aren't
hate
firs,
noble
but go
firs, and we
ahead.
want to chop them all down, but we love the Douglas. So, did we, you know, is that covered or not? So I think that if it's unclear, somebody is a designated spokesperson, it should default to the president.
Can we go through your
So-
thing? Maybe
So, but
by
committee members meeting with agencies or groups or whatever are already designated to do the work of that committee and speak for the board under the jurisdiction of that committee, correct?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Is that not addressing a concern of
I made
yours,
it one
Scott?
page.
I think what Shay
Oh, is this
just
changed from?
said
No,
made
it's the same as
sense,
before?
so
I
I
just
don't
made it
see why
smaller.
we need something additional.
Smaller, you have to make everything bigger.
I know. I just changed it from 12 to
There's
11.
there's copies if anybody wants to see them.
I do that all the time, then I can't read it.
I think that you need an
But what is
umbrella.
it that you're worried about or concerned about?
That some media person somewhere is gonna be saying, what's your policy on trash removal?
And somebody just talks
And
out.
somebody says, oh, I'm on the board and
Right,
our policy
exactly.
is blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
And I think that's what we want to try to prevent that, and we want to
Well-
also have it pass through at least 2 members of the board and have it really looked at, so we don't, it doesn't go out without, you know,
This
the
is
proper
official
word.
board policy, not what she happens to think about that.
What if there is no
She
official
stated it very
policy?
poorly, pardon?
What if there is no official policy on whatever the reporter happens to think of?
Well, that's why they're saying if you have a designated person, you're trusting that that person's smart enough at any point to
Well,
not screw
What
up.
it's
I'm
trying,
not doing that,
I'm not either. I mean, that's why I'm thinking.
including the president, though. I mean,
Right, oh, no, I'm
Well-
not
And I'm
either.
not talking about particular people, I'm thinking about
No.
in general. you
I'm
know.
thinking about, in general, it's better to, I mean, it's kind of, we're talking 2 things, right? That's not exactly here.
Right, it's, yeah,
Press releases should be approved or looked at by the whole board, and if someone has
That's a
an
nice
issue.
idea.
but also who represents
Who
SMRPD?
represents Congress? You know, there's
Well, they have
450 opinions.
They have designated representatives though, for specific situations.
Each,
And they also have overall,
It's the Speaker of the House.
there's speakers of the House, and there's a
Yes.
president of the Senate.
yeah, for things that they,
That are
okay,
masked.
but they can still have, but there's still 450 opinions that,
Right.
but there's still media contact.
Well, here's the difference. Is it if Shay can have an opinion, Linda can have an opinion, Greg can have an opinion, they can have 3 diametrically opposed opinions.
okay,
They could all say to a reporter,
yes.
because I'm a free person and an individual, I am on this board and here's what I think.
Yeah,
They can't say, I'm on this board and it's the board's position that.
well, they can say it, but it wouldn't be true.
Right.
You're saying.
In other words,
We shouldn't
want-
be saying
We
it.
want a policy that
Okay.
says they shouldn't do that.
Right.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
They shouldn't represent the board policy or the board's position as something. You
If,
can re-
yes, if
And
the
then we
board
need to-
hasn't agreed to it, yes.
Exactly.
Right.
You need to make it a positive thing, like you said earlier. Does that get addressed in here, Lynn?
Well, I added it as E, the official position of the SMRPD shall be represented by the president or his designee. So I added it as the E.
What's
Under the
the
policy.
question again, Scott?
Whether any of these words do any good.
Well, it's certainly what happens if someone violates the policy.
The
Basically
board-
nothing.
Well, the board slaps them on the hand and, or takes their position away.
Public
Takes
ridicule.
it all
Well,
their-
I think
takes all
it
their
gives them, again, it gives them
responsibilities
some
There again, yeah.
parameters
Okay.
that, of what needs to happen. And it also gives the public a view of what should happen, so that they can see whether the board members are following the procedure and the policies.
And if somebody keeps screwing up different procedures, then they become like that Steve Rocco guy.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know, and
You know,
they're
that-
held up to extreme ridicule and good for good reason.
Yeah,
The stocks.
Yeah.
We put 'em in the
We'll put 'em
stocks,
out,
that's
that's what
it.
we'll do. If they violate it, we'll put a stockade.
Yeah,
Should it be on the Abbey property or at the market?
it should be right next to the sign so that when they rotate the signs, everybody.
Oh,
sees.
that's right, okay.
That way we can all be rotated through on appropriate times.
There we
Yeah.
go. We all get a turn.
Is that addressing your concern, Scott? It's trying to. What are we missing?
What you just need to do is, when they take office, go and have a little study session and go through the whole policy
So that-
together.
That helps some people,
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
everybody.
Doesn't help.
I think some people do that.
But the fact, I always
Actually,
liked
nobody
it when,
did that.
Oh, really?
Well,
No one
no,
ever gave us any,
Oh.
any,
Oh.
no, when you guys came in, it was like a free-for-all, everybody
You're
on their
supposed
own.
to-
nobody, yeah.
When Lisa came in,
no, I say,
we
but you're
gave her
drawing it up
stuff.
now so that it can be done. Cause I think there was nothing better than our son was sent to, our son went to the charter school, down in Santiago, and they had a contract that he signed, we signed, and it was all done the first week and going to classes. Everything was understood, there was nobody
Well,
saying later,
there's-
oh, I didn't know, you know,
Right.
and it sounds to me kinda like you need to do a little bit of that
There's,
from here on out to let the whole people know that this is gonna be the policy.
You know, you can give the new board members the policy with a little signature in the bottom saying, "I have read and understand this."
And you know
policy."
what,
that's what they do at nonprofit boards.
Lisa had a valid argument when she first came on, and she was given all of this information and books and everything, and it was like, boom, she had to make decisions on the fly. And she said, where is how to be a board member document for new board members? That should be something that we do, and I thought it was a really good idea. And I mean, it requires sitting down and a
Well,
bunch
and
of
I
people
think-
putting stuff together.
And I think that's really what operating procedures are all about.
Yeah,
Putting them together so that
Well,
a person can get oriented to what's,
to some extent, I agree with you, Shay, but I also, I disagree with you to the extent that I think people should have certain qualifications
Yes.
before they get on the board.
I get,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not, but that's not how we work. It's an open election, and
Or-
you get potpourri. or-
Do your homework.
But
Yeah,
that,
whatever.
it behooves them to do their homework, and there are certain laws, there has to be a conflict of interest training within I think every 2 years. There has to be financial disclosure, there has to be, I forget what the other things
For
are.
new board directors, within the first year, there's conflict of interest, and then every 2 years after that.
Yeah, and so there are those things.
Yeah.
There also is an oath of office, that there's an oath of office, that everybody
Really
should have taken. I know, I used to,
We support the Constitution of the
Yeah.
United States.
Basically,
from enemies, foreign enemies.
I was
Okay,
disappointed.
can we go back to this? So, I wondered on number 1C, should the press release part be there, or should it just be left down in the bottom?
Where is it? 1C?
1C.
I thought it should be, press releases will be submitted to all board members. for
No,
review.
I'm saying, should it be here, or should it be under press release procedure?
well, I
Oh.
think, well, policy is a short statement and the procedure is really more operating.
Yeah.
Oh, that's, I'm sorry, I didn't,
So
you didn't read
it's
it.
policy.
Yeah, I understand now.
So really like A through E now would go, if you were to put it in your policy, it would go in that other document.
We didn't get an E.
Well, I just read you E.
Oh, sorry.
Linda gave you E.
Oh, okay.
The official position of the SMRPD shall be represented by the president or her designee.
I think that, so the statement C, press release will be submitted to designated board members for review.
I'd like to make it all.
All,
Yeah,
that's what we said,
that
all.
wouldn't have changed what happened.
Yeah.
Right.
All.
And then under,
And then
So
I
should it
we
be at
add
least-
24 hours. It
And
is
I would,
recommended that at least 2 board members review and approve the release prior to circulating to the media.
I would take that out.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I would say, then we go, then
And the
we go to
reason-
the procedure.
The reason I would take that out is because you're creating a quorum, and you're creating the possibility of creating a
Thank you.
policy or a state led with a quorum on the board, which would then be a violation of Brown.
Just so we know.
As an example. You've got one person writing the press release, two people reviewing it, that's three people, that's a quorum.
But that's not a policy, so that's not a Brown Act violation.
No, but
No, because the three of us doing something isn't a policy
it doesn't
issue.
matter.
Yeah, it does.
Yes, it, no, it doesn't.
So really, we can only have two people review. I kind of see your point, we're making a decision
What
that
you can,
affects
what
board
you
business.
you can send it out to all the board members and say, within 24 hours, this press
If you got a
release is gonna
problem,
go
call
out.
me, Yeah,
If you've got a problem with it, call the originator.
right.
And the board president has the right and the responsibility to stop anything at any point. So otherwise, you and Shay and Greg could, Shay could write a press release that says, SMRPD will in the future be holding square dances, blah, blah, blah. It's just a press release. And it's just, but you haven't really discussed with the board. Like
And
it's gonna
allowed
be-
the public to input.
Right.
That's where we would be missing.
So we would
both.
say if there's no disagreement with the press release, it will be released in 24 hours.
So what if we got rid of the whole second sentence and then it goes to the procedure part? So the policy is the press release submitted to all board members for review, then you go straight down to the procedure part. And that's where we put out the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah, this consent thing is,
That's a
Send
different.
from whom and by whom.
Well, if you were
That's
using a
different topic
picture or
we're talking-
something, you'd have to get, or a statement by somebody, like if somebody from, that's just general language.
is that more of a procedure thing?
probably.
I always put pictures on press releases, but
Yeah, but I'm thinking,
Right, but are you
you're
getting
talking about
consent of the
consent.
people in the pictures to do it?
You're supposed
yeah,
to.
there's usually something that I don't have to, so,
It's a legal issue.
yeah.
Okay.
It was not clear to me what consent you're talking about. Are you gonna ask Tom if it's okay to put a
No.
picture
Well,
of
there's
somebody
No,
else?
a
people
written
in the
consent.
picture are supposed to consent to.
Okay.
Yeah,
the
and there
use
is
of
a
the
written
picture.
consent that goes with this.
Part of this?
I think I'm
Or-
right. It's just a one-liner that says I consent to having my picture or my statement released, basically.
So on C, we're gonna just keep
Yeah.
the first sentence under policy and then the rest will all be below?
I think it has to be part of the policy that if no opposition is made to the statement, that it'll be released in 24 hours.
Can we go back up to A?
No, we're working on C right now, let's work on,
Oh,
let's finish
okay.
something.
C. All right.
We didn't start with A though.
I know, we started with C, we're
Okay,
working on
I'm
C
sorry, I
until
thought
we
we'd
finish.
skipped over.
No, we didn't finish the top line yet. Thank you. So do you think it needs to say something in the 1C about the release will be,
Yeah, because you want your 24 hours in there.
oh, but wouldn't that be down here?
No, because it's a policy, not a procedure. It
Okay.
could be both, but it has to be a policy.
Okay, good.
All you have to say is something like, all press releases will be submitted to all board members within 24 hours of release.
No, all press releases will be submitted to all board members for review. Then the next thing will be within released,
It will be released within 24
24
hours
hours.
if no opposition.
yeah. if
Fine.
no-
Okay, and will be released within 24 hours if no opposition. Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
If somebody wants to make a press release to be released, say, in 5 days, is that a problem?
Oh, no, that gives you lots of
Yeah.
time. Most people want to release the press release and have it go out that second.
I just wondered if the policy allows that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't
Will
allow
be
anything
released.
shorter
It
than.
won't say in 24
nothing
hours.
shorter. So that means it'll take 24 hours from the time it's written before it can be released. Okay, now, what if all the board members say that's okay, send it? Then they could release it sooner.
Then you're asking for
Okay.
consent.
Yeah, and then you're making a decision, and then that's a Brown Act issue, right?
Yeah.
It could
It's a pretty, edgy brown.
Depending on what's in the release and what you're
Yeah,
saying, you're
never
gonna.
mind, leave it like you said it, I think that covers it, leaves it broad enough.
Okay.
Anytime you're soliciting a vote from all of the board members, you are without prior notification, violating the Brown Act.
So let's go down to 3A,
Why are we skipping the
One A.
because we're on 1C, and 1C continues at 3, because it's all related to press releases. So can we do all the press
All right,
release at
all right.
once?
Yeah, sure.
Good. I thought you were the smarter one here.
No, I'm
Yes.
not. No, I'm
Okay.
gonna show you I'm not.
So procedure A is it's gonna be sent to the board members
So get rid
Two
of
for,
designate.
for review and approval prior to release. Board members are required to review and comment within 24 hours.
I think that's fair. If
Well,
I'm out of town,
review
do that for me.
and comment if opposed. Right?
Yes, yeah. Or if they have corrections to, well, just comment, because they could be happy or they
But
could
what,
be.
are they required, if they all comment,
I like how it says comments will be made to originator of the press release. That way they're not, they can't do reply all
Yeah.
and make a comment.
That's
you
what-
guys
That's
do
what
that.
keeps, I keep trying. That's what
Okay.
keeps it from really becoming a Brown Act, it's just between that person. It's still on the edge of Brown Act because it's not exactly serial.
that's
but
right, it's not serial,
It's
and
not
we're not
serial,
talking
but
to multiple people.
Everybody's saying, good, good, oh, you did something really bad, you did a typo.
I think that you are missing a critical piece of the Brown Act.
No, I'm not missing the critical piece of the Brown Act. If we did what you're describing, then there will have to be a special meeting before it's released.
No, an attempt to reach a consensus of the board is without public notification.
Then we just have to not meet. Then we're done. Now you're making me as mad as Ron gets when he keeps going off. It goes,
No,
yes, no, it's exactly,
Why-
you're
why-
making, it's
why is this-
unmanageable then.
No, it's not.
It is. Then what you're saying is we have to allow, then, if what you're saying is true, we're gonna have to put it to a committee of 2 and let them do it because that doesn't violate any Brown Act.
Well, that's what the policy is now.
You notified this meeting, this is, because there are 3 members here. So it's not a violation of the Brown Act,
Well, it's not a violation of Brown
this
Act.
meeting.
I never said it was.
Okay. So I don't understand what, if you ask for a vote, if you ask for
No,
a
we're
response.
not asking for, you created a press release and you send it to us.
Yes,
And the other guy doesn't answer. And none of us answer. And you send it out because that's what the policy says you can do.
right,
That's not a violation of any problem.
exactly.
Okay, if I mail back and say, you know, I'm really uncomfortable with you putting anything about church and religion in here, and the other 2 don't respond. Now, if they respond, but I'm not in on their conversation, it's not a serial
Right.
chain. That's why.
No, what I'm saying that is the violation is when you are seeking a consensus.
We're not. The originator
Well, the
only
consensus
talks.
would be that the press release is okay.
If what you're if you are asking people to approve it, then you're asking for permission to send it out. That's asking for a consensus. If you're saying, you are hereby notified that this press release will go out unless I hear something that somebody doesn't like something, you're not asking for a consensus. You could, in that statement.
We're both saying exactly the same thing. Why aren't you hearing what I'm saying?
She's saying a way that we could do this without any argument.
But she's saying the same thing I just said.
It sounds kind of the same to me, but
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah. There's no all of us talking about it at once, because that's the meeting.
okay, we get that.
Okay,
but I
so.
think what Linda's saying is you can't say, does everybody agree?
Oh,
exactly.
no,
Yeah,
no.
He's not
Right,
saying
nobody
that.
says that.
Yeah.
Right.
If you
okay.
like it, don't respond.
Right, exactly.
If I don't hear concerns by X time,
Right,
I'll assume it's
24
okay.
hours.
Yeah.
But it's exactly the same.
So we need
Well,
to
You aren't
take,
the smartest person. I'm not
I'm
taking
not.
you off the smart list.
so
Okay,
we
well,
need,
don't, just put me at the lower down, just lower down.
so what about C? Then do we take that off, or,
Okay, let's see.
because there is really no approval anymore,
It's the whole board's approved it then.
right?
Yeah, I don't think that's.
Well, but it, no, it has to go to the, it always has to go by the president.
Okay.
No, what if the president or the vice president don't respond?
No, wait a minute. You don't want some,
Well, that's why in B, I put that the president was the one to do the release.
Oh, up on top,
Yeah.
policy, okay.
Does anybody know
Well,
what
then he
other-
doesn't have to wait for his own response.
any other legislative bodies do?
yeah,
They all
they
have
hire,
staff.
they hired staff to take care of it.
So that's our issue, is we don't have staff, so how do we do it?
And they have
do
an
good,
attorney.
Not break the law,
Right.
Okay, how does the staff know what to do?
because if they do something wrong, their board will fire them. So they have so much money, they hire the person who actually knows how to do that job.
Well, and,
But he doesn't just make up stuff, right?
well, and bureaucrats are really
no.
good, bureaucrats are really good at avoiding problems. That's why they're so good at avoiding, at doing nothing, because that's a good way to avoid problems.
So the PIO at the fire department
Okay, for example.
is making comments all the time, but he's trained, they pick a smart fireman to do that job. They don't just pick any fireman to do
I
that
see,
job.
so he kind of knows what to say.
Exactly.
He already knows what to say, he knows the party line in and out, he's at all the chiefs' meetings probably, well, he's a battalion chief, so he's right up there at the top, so,
Okay, so he doesn't need a lot of board input to do all of his
Right.
responses?
and he still could get slapped in
And
the
he
hand,
also-
but probably not much, because he's
And
he's not under the Brown Act.
well, and also, she's probably really good at knowing how far she can go. So she can go up to this point and go, no, I can't really answer that question. I'll have to go back and check with blah,
Okay.
blah, blah.
All of us aren't that sophisticated. Okay, so, now we're on the
Press
same
release.
page.
Yeah, how do we do number C? Because
Number
we're
C.
stuck.
Which
It's
C?
recommended that there be approval by at least 2 board members prior to
Well,
public sector.
No.
no response is the approval then.
Correct.
That's, we're changing it to no response is
Okay.
approval.
Just
Okay,
That
we're-
means
we
all have
changed
to be on
that.
our toes.
Why don't we just say, can we ask for this, that they just respond that it was reviewed? That at least one other person respond that it was reviewed, so
That it
that
was
what if it
okay.
goes out? What if it goes out and nobody gets it?
None of
really
us
gets
got
it.
it.
Yeah,
You
None
could-
of us saw it for review.
yeah, can you say,
Does it?
because that's not a violation if you said it was reviewed. Is it,
It's a violation by who?
of the Brown Act? That it was reviewed
Oh, no, any,
or received,
There may be an implied consent.
or
issue.
received, how about received, not reviewed, received?
There might be an implied consent issue.
maybe it should say that the president or the vice president have to approve the final draft. Maybe C should say something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you wanna,
So if 2 people come up with a press release and a 3rd person approves
But
it?
I thought the president was already making it.
No.
But
Oh,
it
no,
should be
the
under the
board.
procedure.
Oh,
and then you're thinking then you've got 3 people in a
Yeah.
violation.
Right.
No, not everything we do is a violation of Brown Act. There's no decision made. Is this safe to put out? Like, we now know that some people they can't check for typos. So those 2 people can't be the final approvers of stuff. So,
But
yeah,
that's not a
See,
legal
that's why I
issue.
think that there should be a designated person who writes.
we have that already. Our communications person.
Okay, and then, must be approved by the president before it's submitted.
Or final approval by the president before it's released.
Unless
President or his designee.
Unless it's been reviewed at a scheduled board, properly scheduled board.
I mean, what press releases are so important that they have to go out right away, that they can't wait for the president to.
Right.
And that's what it says in B, that it's, the president will
B.
prepare, or a designated person will make a response if the president is not available.
But should it be under the procedure too, so nobody,
Yeah.
What board members are required to review and comment within 2 days?
24 hours?
24 hours we changed it.
Okay, but you're asking for a comment?
No,
Comment
And
may
it
be
should say
correcting typos.
opposition comment, opposition,
But it could be
opposing
anything.
comments?
It could be anything, it could be typo, it could be that's the stupidest press release I've ever seen. I really like it, it could be any comment.
What were you thinking?
Yeah.
That's what I wrote.
What were you thinking?
Okay, so C and
So
D.
C should be final, with final approval by the president,
Yeah. And then we don't need D.
right?
And then maybe E should go into B.
Wait a
Submission
minute, D,
of E.
wait, D is if
Maybe-
there's no response received within 24 hours. Yeah, that's part of it, it'll be released. And E should go into
B.
B.
So you're leaving in if no response is received?
No, we
Within
gotta-
24 hours, the information will be released.
So are you're
We're gonna
leaving
leave
it
that
in?
in?
Well,
Yeah, that's the procedure,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
well, but wait a minute. If the final approval is the president,
That means-
and they don't hear from the president, does that mean
They
they
can
can send
release
it
it.
out?
after, it will be, no,
I don't think it should. What would be the hurry of any press release that it has to go out
It's
without
just-
approval of the president?
After
Right.
president, after review by the president, after final approval by the president.
See, really, what you're doing is, I think, maybe you wanna add the phrase that the, press releases will be submitted to all board members as a courtesy to the board members. Put the phrase in there, as a courtesy to the board members.
Instead of required to review.
Yes.
So, press
Mhm.
release, or
That's a good idea,
what she said,
yeah. All press releases will be
press releases will be.
sent to,
Shall be,
Shall
because
be.
you want to make sure it happens not if, only if the person
Yeah.
shall be released to all board members as a courtesy
Period.
prior to
Yeah.
submission to the media. And then if you say the president must approve all press releases. That covers it, doesn't it?
I like leaving E in because, it says if anybody objects, it goes, we have to have a meeting.
Yeah. This is not as problematic to me as, if you're upfront, you're calling it a courtesy,
Mhm.
then you're saying clearly, you don't.
Yeah,
have
you're
to-
not required to
Yeah.
review it,
Right.
yeah.
Well, we recognize that all people are interested.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, fix it.
Okay, so at the very top line, are we gonna leave it as employees how are we gonna
No,
reword that?
I would say just board of directors.
right.
Right. That's why
That was
that
my problem.
everybody was so concerned about it looking like a gag order.
Do you think they understand that that wasn't the intent?
No.
Fucking
I'm
assholes.
sorry.
Okay, so 1A. It's a
You want me to
policy.
be honest?
that.
Yes, I do.
Or
Editing
or
for
sensitive.
I expect you to be honest with me.
Okay, well, you either get honest or
Yeah.
sensitive.
No, honest.
Yeah, this is your policy manual for your board,
Yeah.
and employees. You can't control volunteers.
Do we need to leave employees in it then?
I don't know,
You're not gonna ask Steve.
Employees don't speak for the board, that would only be
Yeah.
Bev, Megan, and
Steve
Steve,
and
they
Wendy.
never do that.
I think that because we added E, I think it'll cover it.
Okay.
Do
So,
you- go ahead.
so going to Linda's burning issue of 1A, what does everybody think about it?
I think that you have a PR nightmare with the word however. I think that you want to say, is the policy of SMRPD to cooperate fully with media and be as forthright and forthcoming and as possible in all circumstances, period. No qualifications, no equivocations.
So maybe the rest of the however on should go under the procedure part?
Yeah.